So welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at a survival landscape that is profoundly, almost aggressively social. Today we are exploring the unique, rebellious, and deeply philosophical worldview of a figure who calls himself Crispy T.
Right, the UK ambassador for medical cannabis.
Exactly. And the mission here for you listening is to trace how his perspective evolves. We're going to look at how a discussion that starts with reframing medical cannabis as a tool for neurodivergent clarity actually builds, step by step, into a literal blueprint for surviving a post-internet apocalypse.
And doing that through human empathy and offline mesh networking. It is a remarkably dense and fascinating source text.
It really is.
What we have is essentially a passionate monologue that challenges some very deeply ingrained ideas about modern society, capitalism, and human connection. Our goal is to look at the world through his eyes for a little bit, balancing his striking societal critiques with his intensely practical community-building projects.
Yeah, and the very foundation of his philosophy starts by tackling a massive cultural stereotype.
It's the laziness stereotype. Right?
Exactly. The persistent idea that cannabis is fundamentally a sedative that, induces laziness or just makes you want to zone out. For Crispy T, who was actually diagnosed with autism and ADHD later in life, it provides crucial clarity.
Which is such an important distinction. What's fascinating here is he addresses this dynamic directly, specifically speaking to people who might have tried it once, had an overwhelming experience, and just, wrote the whole thing off.
Yeah, he points out that novice users often make the mistake of consuming way too much. They're trying to match the pace of highly experienced users.
Right. And he brings in a really grounded analogy here. He compares novice cannabis use to alcohol.
Oh, I loved this part.
Yeah, he says it's the difference between sipping a light drink, like a baby sham, and trying to chug a bottle of vodka or a heavy special brew. You have to find your baseline.
Okay, let's unpack this because that baseline concept is key. He describes the ADHD experience as having, and this is a quote, 100 televisions all playing different programs at once.
Which is just an incredibly vivid way to describe it.
It really is. You have different sounds, different channels, all simultaneously blaring, and society expects you to somehow focus on just one.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
So if your brain is like a smartphone with 50 battery-draining apps running in the background, GPS, heavy graphics, notifications, pinging, this baseline he's talking about is like hitting force quit on the unnecessary ones. Suddenly, the operating system can finally run smoothly.
What's fascinating here is the psychological shift that happens. When he reaches his baseline, he stops firing on all cylinders unnecessarily. It literally prevents burnout.
Wow. Yeah. That makes so much sense.
And he takes this a step further. He highlights how he views the highly reactive, angry people in the world. He uses the term Karens as a cultural shorthand. He thinks they are likely suffering from undiagnosed ADHD.
Oh, interesting. So they're trapped in that chaotic mental state.
Exactly. They have those 100 televisions blaring, no baseline to quiet it, and they just project that internal noise outward as public anger.
And he admits he used to be like that, just surviving his own brain.
Yeah.
But once this internal mental chaos is quieted, it creates space for external awareness. You stop surviving your own brain, which allows you to actually see the people around you.
Which leads directly into his philosophy of the mycelium network.
I think the fungal network.
Yeah, in nature, mycelium is this vast underground network connecting roots, sharing nutrients, communicating threats. Crispy T believes humanity is deeply connected in a similar way. We're like individual spores in a vast mycelium network.
But to see that, you have to exit what he calls survival mode.
Right.
He compares his old mindset to Peter Sellers playing Inspector Clouseau, like constantly paranoid, constantly waiting for his assistant Cato to jump out of a closet and attack him.
It's funny, but it's such an accurate visual for how people navigate modern society.
Yeah.
Just physically tense, braced for impact.
So true. And his antidote is proactive kindness. Like he talks about seeing a little girl singing to herself in public, and instead of walking past, he compliments her, gives her a small toy bear he had, and her mom just beams.
Oh, and the boot sale story?
Yes. He just randomly praises a stranger's hat, the stranger praises his tan, and it just creates this upward spiral of good energy.
Right. But, to play devil's advocate for you listening, it sounds lovely, but isn't it exhausting to constantly engage with strangers? Society pretty much trains us to keep our heads down and put our headphones on.
Yeah, that's the big question, right?
It is. But if we analyze the source, he argues that society and poor education systems actually brainwash people into believing strangers are dangerous.
Stranger danger, yeah.
Exactly. We're told we are strictly individuals in competition. For Crispy T, Acknowledging our connection is what breaks that capitalist drone template where everyone is just an ant working for someone else.
Wow, so saying a nice word is like a micro-rebellion.
Precisely, you're waking up another node in the network.
But, if we're going to connect with strangers, mistakes will happen. It gets messy. Which brings us to his 3 strikes and you're out rule for social interaction.
This is such a great framework. It prioritizes intent over saying the perfect words.
Right. There's this great anecdote where he decides to wear a skirt all day. And throughout the day, men casually call him mate, pal, or fella.
Which some people might find really offensive.
Exactly. But instead of being offended by their limited conversational tools, he gives them credit for trying to interact at all. He extends that grace to innocent conversational blunders, too.
Yeah, like guessing someone's accent wrong, or using the wrong cultural greeting, saying konnichiwa to a Korean person, or assalamu alaikum to a Hindu person.
He assumes they're just clumsy, maybe neurodivergent themselves, but their intent is friendly.
This raises an important question about how we handle conflict, especially when it's more heated.
Yeah, like the other boot sale incident.
Right. So, looking at this impartially, without taking any political sides on the immigration debate, there was a woman complaining loudly about foreigners looking for bargains.
And instead of attacking her, he uses a personal analogy.
Exactly. He highlights his methodology of de-escalation.
He's basically begging society to end how conversations stop.
Yeah.
He wants people to gently correct each other, maybe make a joke, but keep the human contact alive, rather than instantly shutting someone down. Because
that high tolerance for human flaw isn't just about being friendly. It is the required social foundation for his ultimate goal.
But he's massive.
It is. You can't build a survival community if everyone is easily offended, which leads into his master plan, FeelFamous.
Here's where it gets really interesting. What happens when the systems we rely on, power grids, the internet, solar storms, when all of that fails?
That's where the FeelFamous project comes in. You can find it at FeelFamous.com. It's about offline Basecamps, hotspot creators, mesh networking.
Okay, I need you to explain, like I'm 5 here. How does a mesh network actually work if the cell towers are dead?
Sure. So normally your phone talks to a central tower. If the tower dies, your phone is useless. But a mesh network lets devices connect directly to each other. Device A talks to B, B talks to C. It hops along, creating a mesh using old mobile phones and these tiny, cheap microcontroller called ESP32s.
And he mentions QR codes sending messages to dead drops. How do you read a QR code without internet?
Well, you scan a massive printed QR code from miles away using a drone or telescope. It doesn't take you to a website. It connects your phone to that localized ESP32 Wi-Fi signal. That chip hosts a digital bulletin board at dead drop where you leave offline messages for your community.
That is wild and so smart. He wants to teach millennials, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, these pre-internet survival skills.
Yeah, so they don't become virtual reality drones. He literally cites the movie Ready Player One as a warning.
But the irony is he's using modern AI to do it. He automates his tedious administrative tasks with AI, effectively training good AI to buy him time.
Exactly. It's a brilliant paradox.
He automates his ADHD hurdle so he can go offline and build analog human-to-human resilience.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, he talks about the village elder or shaman. The idea that you don't need to be a total expert to teach. You just need to know one chapter more than the person you were teaching.
I love that. One chapter more.
Yeah, Crispy T is urging us to document and hand over our knowledge now. He mentions how NASA allegedly lost the context of how they went to the moon.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, the institutional knowledge was lost. If we lose our localized offline knowledge, it won't be easily rebuilt. We must become the nodes of the mycelium network before a crisis hits.
So what does this all mean for you listening? We've traveled a long way today. From using medical cannabis to quiet a neurodivergent mind, to realizing we're connected spores in a network.
And learning to forgive clumsy social interactions to keep the dialogue open.
Right. All the way to building offline mesh networks to survive a digital collapse. True rebellion today isn't about isolation. It's about radical, forgiving community building.
It really is. And Crispy T leaves us with a final lingering question to ponder. He reminds us that you only need to be one chapter ahead to teach someone else.
Yeah.
So if the internet permanently vanished tomorrow, what is the one crucial chapter of knowledge you possess that you could teach to your offline village? And more importantly, do you know who is in your village?